Alright guys, welcome to this special review of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Darkside Dimensions. I have finally seen it. It is a film that had very little promotion. If you didn't go to these places where they hold trading card tournaments or sell cards that is exclusively like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon cards, those type of places, you probably would not know this film actually even existed. In fact, there was very few actual movie reviewers who actually even talk about this movie after it came out. It was actually almost non-existent. Only those who were die-hard anime fans or die-hard Yu-Gi-Oh fans actually had spread the word. The Yu-Gi-Oh official Yu-Gi-Oh YouTube site have actually had small clippings pushing the movie forward. There was very little commercial push, and a lot of it had to do with the very first movie, The Pyramid of Light, which had a very big push, had a very big promotional push, but it underperformed in the box office. That and the fact that the criticism of that movie, well deserved, if I may say, really didn't help matters. There was a second movie that was made, but it wasn't officially a movie here in the US. It was in Japan, and it did had a small release, something similar to the Darkside Dimension. That was Yu-Gi-Oh! Fusion Beyond Time, where you had the 3 series, the original series, the GX, and the 5Ds. They pretty much had that ultimate crossover, and I give credit where credit's due. It was a much better film. It still has some problems, but it was still a much better film than the Pyramid of Light was. But after that, there really wasn't no animation film. They was really focusing squarely on the TV series with 5Ds, then Zexcel, then Arc 5, and now I think Vane is the next thing that's coming out. I don't know if there's actually still working on the actress and the actors for that series in the US version, but I know I believe it's running very smoothly in Japan, and they also have the Link Fusion monsters, which you either like it or you don't. But in any case, no one really expected them to go back in time and do an original movie based on the original series. I was actually kind of shocked when I found out that they was actually pushing for a new film, and in fact I didn't even realize that it was going to be a theatrical release, but only in a limited release in New York and some other states. It didn't have too much of a big push in theaters, and those who did win most likely were die-hard fans. I don't know the numbers of this of how much they made when it was in theaters, and I myself didn't see it only because it was not really heavily advertised, and the theater screenings were extremely limited. Some of them only had 2 screenings. It was very rare that you had 3 screenings or 4 for this movie, and it's actually pretty long. It's almost 2 hours long for this film, but it didn't have the screenings that really fit my time schedule, because I do work and I do have to make sure I get some sleep. So it was very limited, to the point where I just decided to wait until it came on in some streaming channels or on DVD. It finally came out, and now I can actually talk about it. And I can tell you right now, with this movie, I am pleased to say that this is a very strong improvement animation wise towards the first film, even the second film to a greater extent. I really love the animation in this movie. I felt this type of animation is definitely worthy of a theatrical release. That in itself, it is a beautiful film to watch. I give all props to the animation department, who really stepped up their game, really updated some of the classic cards while giving some light to some of the newer cards that have been shown in this film. The voice acting, Eric Stewart, David Green, all the actresses. It feels like you never left this world. They really was on top of their game. As for the script and dialogue that was given, well, we'll talk about that for a moment, because I know a lot of people, whether you're a fan of Hugo or even not a fan of Hugo, you may either like or hate, and for the following reasons that I'm going to be talking about, which really brings to the situation is that this is a movie that's going to split a lot of fans down the middle. If you're just looking for entertainment, popcorn entertainment, you probably will have a less gripe with this movie than those who are diehard fans, those who played the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, those who watched the series, the original series, and remember the original series as this is just still coming out. You probably will have a mixed feeling on what they decide to do with this film than those who are just watching it out of curiosity, or who are just watching it because they like animation or anime. They probably have a different feeling towards this film, and rightfully so, depending on how much of a purist you are. But let's first answer the question here: where did this take place? I'm gonna take a guess that it takes place 6 years or 10 years before GX, and I'm putting that in line because one, Hughie is just graduating. This is his last year of high school. Taya has been accepted to a dance class in New York. So a lot of the stories, it's almost like a closing book of the original series, something that I think a lot of people were hoping to have more of, but didn't really get. We had a closing of a Tem, which, by the way, if you're looking for a Tem that just magically appear for the last 8 minutes, you're only going to get like 13 seconds of him. Not counting the holographic duel between him and Kaiba, which was actually well done. But I'll get to the duels in a minute, because it brought a smile to my face for the good reasons and for the bad reasons that I'll explain here. But in terms of the continuity, I'm saying this is between the original series and about 6-7 years down the line between GX. GX is not a factor here. There was nothing mentioned in GX, nothing even hinting that he's doing a GX class. And the reason why I'm bringing this up here in this review, which I didn't really need to, but I felt I had to clear this up, is because a lot of videos came out and said, did Kaiba actually died at the end of the film? Because there was something he did, and it goes by the one of the two stories that's going on here that pretty much hinted that Kaiba died. Well, if you follow GX, you know he's alive there. So it's highly unlikely that whatever he done, whether he did it for the right reason or the wrong reason, we'll talk about that. I believe he came back, finally was at peace, and began to establish the GX Academy that we have seen with GX. With that being said, on its own, I'm just going to just review this film just on its own merit, because it's important that we just look at this film on its own merit and break down some of the things that worked and didn't work. Because again, this is going to be a mixed bag for a lot of people. For me, I enjoyed it for what it was. I wasn't looking for anything big and grand, and what I got was a pleasant surprise. Again, one of the weakness of this of the Yu-Gi-Oh movies, particularly mostly animation films based on TV shows, is they don't know how to make that next step from television to movies. Here they did. I actually felt they have done it, particularly the animation alone. However, there is some problems with the film, and a lot of it has to do with the 4-Kids syndrome to an extent. I think a lot of people seem to try and compare the Japanese version from the American version a little too much. You got to remember, different culture. They don't look at television the same way, as well as movie the same way. So I think you have to look at it just as an American version property only. And I'm going to be looking at the Japanese version, because I know the Japanese version dialogue alone is 10 times different and probably makes more sense than the American version. But I'm looking at this, I'm not looking at the Japanese version, I'm looking at the American version, and I'm going to go by what it is. Let's talk about the story here. There's two things going on. We got Diva, who is a mysterious person who Hughie sort of kind of know but don't know, and it has something to do with this cube that he has, this mixed cube of the prana that was given to him by Shadi. Yes, Shadi still has a factor somehow in this in the Yu-Gi-Oh world, but it actually goes deeper into his past, which is something that was, even though we realized at the very end of the Yu-Gi-Oh show that he wasn't really a live physical being but a spiritual essence, they actually explain what actually happened. And this is where we get into territory that if you're Yu-Gi-Oh purist with the original TV, you might not like the moves that they have done in this movie in terms of explaining some things with the faith of Shadi. But in any case, we just find out that the Prada, he wants to seek revenge for two reasons. One, for the death of his teacher, and two, he wants to target Hughie because Hughie, he knows, was the vessel for the pharaoh, Atem, and there was a prophecy made that when Atem leaves the world, the prana will be him along with the chosen children in this movie. However, it was also explained that if the pharaoh was to return, then the power will disappear forever. So there is a situation where they feel that he feels blindly, by the way, by getting rid of Hughie, the pharaoh can no way can return. So there's a lot of bad decisions on his side. He doesn't feel what he's doing is evil. He feels that he's doing this because the evil people in the world must be punished, and he feels the only way to have true light is by getting rid of those who have done bad things. And he goes about the wrong way. His sister in this movie tries to tell him, his friend tries to tell him that this is not the way the teachings will be approved. Shadi would not approve of this, but he's so blinded by his own pain of losing his teacher in front of him, and by the hatred he has for Bakura, which actually plays a part of this. And also the fact is that he feels he needs to protect the prana, this mystical power at all costs, that he's willing to do bad things to do it, not realizing he's corrupting the very teachings of Shadi himself. So that's been one of the main stories that's happening. We get Seto Kaiba's story. Seto Kaiba is very, very interesting because we see him, and we can tell from the very start when he first came in the screen that he hasn't really gotten over the fact that he never got that rematch with Atem. He's still bitter that the fact is that Atem had beaten him, and even though his technologies and Combat Club have advanced way beyond when anybody ever imagined. This is a guy who has an elevator going up into a space station. This is a guy who had made holographic comes to life beyond anything anyone could imagine, and yet here he is sitting there, basically sitting on his chair, or may I say sitting there gloating on his own feelings of the pharaoh, which he himself had seen cross over, and he just simply cannot accept, to the point where he's having an exhibition to dig up the pieces of the Millennium item. And this is something that I scratch my head. I'm saying you still hasn't gotten over the fact that that you have lost to this guy, and it was plain in his own thoughts that he cannot heal what has happened, but at least it will put him at ease somewhat. And it really shows the makeup of Kaiba. Kaiba just cannot accept losing, especially someone who was actually, he himself admitted, both in the American version and in the Japanese version, that he was a worthy rival. He doesn't consider him as an enemy, but just simply a rival that he simply cannot accept losing to. And as a result, he's risking everything just to actually put this puzzle back together to have one last duel with Atem, which in my own opinion is why. You are a successful businessman. You have done so much in such little time. Why can't you just be happy with that? Well, a lot of people say it's because he needs his rival. It's the only thing that makes him really truly worth alive. But it also showed the psychological makeup of Kaiba, to the point that he held a tournament for the sole purpose of actually assembling the Millennium Puzzle, because the puzzle, actually he was still missing two puzzles that which Diva had taken before they already escaped and went back to Kaiba Corp. He gave it to his sister, Diva. One of the puzzles, why he kept one to himself, and he gave one to the sister only for his sister to give it to Hughie, which in terms, this is how Hughie got involved in this. Hughie, I won't say was an afterthought in this movie, because he's not. But it really did focus a lot on these two characters. Our favorite character, my favorite anti-hero, Seto Kaiba, and of course Diva. And I think, for the most part, I think they did his job of setting up these two characters. You need to know why things were going on. As for everybody else, it was very clear. This is a story about Kaihugi, Diva, Kaiba. Everybody else, Joey Wheeler, Tristan, even Taya, was pretty much left almost on the sideline. It was almost an afterthought. They were just there as really just to be there. I mean, that's pretty much it. This was clearly about these three characters. And Hughie, who has pretty much moved on, not really thinking much about dueling at all, is pretty much forced back into a situation because you have two guys really making bad decisions throughout this whole entire movie. It's just been one bad decision after another. Kaba's selfish decision to basically try and force Hughie to fight, which he pretty much did. I mean, let's be honest, he was in the middle of the street, holding up traffic. He knew Hughie was going to be there. He knew Hughie had the other piece of the puzzle, and he knew Hughie's pretty much the only one who can wield the spirit of the Pharaoh in his vessel. And basically had just basically said, "Hey, I got Diva. I want you to do. You're going to do. You're gonna resurrect the Pharaoh." He's not thinking about what Hughie wants or what was best for Hughie. He's thinking about himself and no one else. And that's alone is a very, very situation, and that you just scratch your head. Again, Diva ain't no saint either. He finally confronts Bakura, and we reveal what actually happened, which led Bakura to obtain the ring, which is a contradictory to what we have known in the TV show. Okay, but again, if you're gonna go by that, you're gonna permanently bang your hand on the wall. If you look at it as just, okay, this is the movie that's pretty much doing what the Transformers have done with their own series, just basically tweaking or adding more information to what actually happened. We knew a father gave it to him in the television series, but here it was a whole different story, which provides that only those who are destined to wield these items are the ones who can control it or contain it, or will contain you. It all depends. We also realize that the Millennium Ring, which was mentioned, was hinted in other stories before seeing this movie, that even though the spirit of the ring, the evil spirit of the ring, is no longer there, doesn't mean that the ring still isn't evil. And this is pretty much the purpose of the whole thing. Is that this ring is not cannot just be contained. It needs to pretty much be kept at bay, especially if it sense you have evil in you. It can be even worse. But that was the whole thing about the movie. This movie really has it's a very, very mixed thing for a lot of people when it comes to that, because those who are fans of the film is going to nitpick that. They're going to nitpick it to death. They're going to nitpick a lot of things about the film, because it does go in its little own direction, go in its little own little thing, including recreating the famous, the epic final battle between Hughie and Atem. That's in the beginning of the film. So it is a lot of inconsistency between what has happened with the original series and here. But I kind of expected it, because again, just because you have the guy who's writing it, who was creator of the original story, doesn't mean that the other people are going to go along with that story, especially with the way the Doom Monsters has been presented here. And I'll get to that very, very shortly. There's pretty much that story going on. So Hughie, again, is pretty much crossed between two guys with huge amount of ego problems, with a grudge they cannot let go, and this is where Hughie comes in. Hughie's like, he's trying, he's getting ready to graduate. He's just living his life. He's going to work on his uncle's game shop, and he's really just relaxing, being with his friends. And here you have Diva, want to kill him because he doesn't want the Pharaoh to be resurrected. And you have Kaiba, who just want to resurrect the Pharaoh, and he's just caught in the middle. Which leads to the epic conclusion, which was the highlight of the movie. And which brings me to the dueling to his general. I'm going to tell you right now, if you are one of those guys, and those who haven't seen the movie yet, I'm assuming, if you're one of those guys, especially those who know the rules of Duel Monsters, who played it, who make videos on YouTube, if you didn't see this movie and you're expecting these duels to make sense, don't even bother. Don't even bother, because I watched this film 5 times already, just to see if I could actually make sense of the dueling itself. The dueling here is crazy. It's insane how the dueling how they got it. Forget about, fusion monsters, rituals. Forget about the rules you think they have. They just summon these monsters for no rhyme and reason, and they just do battle. That's it. This is pretty much almost old school, before they actually had the rules that you gotta have sacrificed 2 monsters. Or you have to have an item or something to make a ritual. This is just say a ritual, and then the monster comes out. I swear, I'm like looking at this film and said, so you're not gonna explain how you fuse 3 dragons together and without a fusion card, and you're not gonna explain how that works. I know in Dimension Summoning, Diva at least explained that part where it makes sense. And that's the only thing that makes sense. But even with that being said, Diva was just making. It's almost like they did, those videos that you see on YouTube, screw the rules, and where they show how Kai was just throwing out cards left and right. That's what Diva was doing. He was basically, he put a monster card, and then when his monster card was about to be attacked, it splits apart and then comes together and he attacks again. Wait a minute. You just ended your battle phase. Isn't that the point? Once you make a battle phase, and once that's completed, the battle phase ends? Nope, not with Diva. I mean, Diva was just hitting, and that was just with Kyber and with Hugh. He was just hitting them left and right. I'm like, this is probably why we have those rules, because of that reason. It's just, it made no sense. A lot of the duels, a lot of the way they were summoning these monsters, it didn't make any sense. But my God, was it so entertaining. It was still fun to watch. I mean, don't get me wrong, but anybody who is a pure duelist, who duels for fun and sport and money, is going to look at this movie and say, this is just absolutely insane. This is actually ridiculous. And it is. I mean, it's just absolutely insane, the stuff they were doing in this movie. But it is what it is. You got to remember, it's animation. They had this problem with this in the television series, where they was doing the same thing. Hughie had made some moves he should not have made, and if you went by the original rules, should have been disqualified for doing. But it's the animation series. This is the same thing with the movie. They're just just doing it to speed things along, to make it entertaining, and it succeeded. But if you're one of those guys who are purists like that, you're gonna pretty much scratch your head or even hate the movie just on that ground alone. It is definitely that insane. Let's go with the dialogue. Here we go. It's 4K entertainment, guys. Come on. You should already know exactly what you're getting into with 4K entertainment. It is not the strongest dialogue in the world. It is obvious that they're trying to target a certain audience, even though technically speaking they shouldn't. But for the most part, I actually thought it was passable. The editing though was weird. I'm gonna tell you right now, there was some editing choices that just. I scratched my head because I'm saying, did I just miss something? It felt like they had something there and it went to black and then went to another scene. It felt like there was supposed to be another scene there. And it wouldn't surprise me if I see the Japanese version, that I see that scene that they went to black to actually be there. This is not the first time they have done this. I was aware that it was actually 15-20 minutes of extra scenes in the Japanese version of Pyramid of Light than it was with the American version. I'm pretty sure that I've seen both versions of Fusion Beyond Time, so I don't see pretty much a difference, only in language, and the tone of it was a little bit different. But here it definitely was. It was very obvious that the editing was a little bit off with the film, and the one thing I always am harsh with is the editing. I don't like when editing is done poorly. It ruins the film. It ruins the flow of the film. And here it wasn't done poorly, but it was done to the point where it was noticeable that something was missing, or they decided at the very last minute we can't show this part in the movie. And 4K has a history of doing that. They have a very bad history of doing that, of editing or redubbing or redoing certain scenes that they considered dark. Surprisingly enough, they didn't do the invisible gun bit, which is something that a lot of people have really criticized a lot with the film. They say, why are you taking the gun out? It doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of people who feel that Yu-Gi-Oh!, and rightfully so, because I've been seeing the Japanese animation, and I'm loving the Japanese animation. I'm like crushed, because I actually grew up with the American version, but I'm absolutely loving these episodes of the Japanese version I'm seeing, it really put a whole new perspective of the series, and pretty much raised question why was this actually done for children. Of course, we all know why it was done for children, because they was targeting the cards for children. Expensive that those Doom Monster cards are, their target was for young children, boys and girls. So I can understand that, and they're not the only one that done that. If you go to different countries, they have their own little version, and they also done their own little touch up both in the car series and in the animated series. But here, for kids did something that I was kind of surprised. They kept the gun in, and that was when Diva was caught by the guard, and he showed his powers and everything else, and he basically disappeared from another dimension. And this was the first confrontation when Kaiba entered the temple where Hugimoto and Atem made their last battles, and it also shows just how much of a big brother Atem was. And I'm sorry, Atem. Kaiba was, because he knew who Diva was, and it's very scary how much technology is. He said he knows what goes on everything around here. I said, damn, so basically you don't believe in privacy, brother? you're basically, you're gonna be spying everybody. You know who everybody is. That's kind of scary. I'm just saying, especially when Hugi said, how did you know? And Kaiba says, I know what goes on everywhere, Domino. Yeah, you do, which is why you have way too much power. But that's Kaiba for you guys. That's why I love him. He's crazy like that. He can only want to get away with him and still make it cool. But he's probably one of the best flesh out characters all the Yu-Gi-Oh series period. I actually do enjoy watching him. Just seeing him alone brings a smile on my face, and I'm glad that Eric Stewart came back to do his voice. He was fantastic in it. But in any case, they really, it was dark. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, the dialogue, it is what it is, but it was darker. I think they really realized that you can't keep playing Hugo with kid gloves, especially if you look at the other series and how dark those series are. I mean, those series are dark. I mean, GX was dark. The XX still had some dark moments. You know, D5 has some dark moments. D5 is insane. In Japanese, it's even more scarier. The Japanese version of D5 is crazy. I didn't even care for D5 too much until I saw the Japanese version and how crazy that was. But yeah, I think they realized that, okay, we know what we gotta do, but we can't, you know, down talk to these audience to the extent where it's not going to be entertaining. They kept the gun. They didn't shoot none. I think that was the main thing. The gun never went off. Where okay, well, we don't. There's no. It's not. You know, they didn't edit anything out. We see the gun. We see it right there. He's pointing a gun at his back. Okay, it's there. People, they kept the gun in this time. Don't complain. They just didn't shoot nobody in that one. So that was a kind of surprise, but overall I think that it balanced out. On one hand, the dialogue wasn't that great, but on the other hand, they didn't do it to the extent where it was sanitized. It was a dark movie. It had some dark moments, and it really does show within the film. So I really think that for the most part, they did a good job of that. My problem really is that the dialogue sometimes can be goofy, and the editing was just weird. And the duelings they have, the action scenes for the Doom Monster they have, was just insane. This is a screw the room moment, and they showed in this whole entire movie. I'm watching this and said, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to, you know, supposed to sacrifice two monsters. I'm pretty sure that a ritual card, you need to have certain requirements for the ritual to work. You just can't say I'm going to ritual summon and then all of a sudden the monster comes out there. So that was the whole crazy part about that whole situation. This film was 2 hours, I believe 8 minutes, but it didn't feel like it. Kind of weird, isn't it? It felt more like an hour and a half than 2 hours. I didn't feel the extra 30 minutes, and I think the thing that really was the strength of this movie was the pacing. The pacing was actually very steady in this movie, even when it's time where there's no action and they're just talking. I never felt that, okay, you gotta hurry along, because I'm getting tired of seeing this. It did a good job pacing. It did a good job setting the action. I must say, I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised of how much they stepped up their game in terms of what they have done right. So what's my overall rating of this? It's hard, you know. It's very, very hard, because in one hand, It's not a film. It's not terrible. Um, it's definitely not Pyramid of Light. Fusion Beyond Time, I probably think is slightly better, but again, that's looking at it from a special, because we didn't get it in the theater, we get it in a special. For a movie theater experience, I go like this. The animation by itself gives it high points. It's beautiful to watch. It felt like they took great details of showing us just of stepping up their game, of making it feel like we were actually watching a movie worthy of our $15 to $19. I will give you that. It is a film that is definitely, cannot look at this film and say this film did not learn this lesson from the last film. I think they did, because number one, when I did the flashback review, I made it very clear that I never felt they made that jump. Most anime, I felt, never really made that extreme push to actually become a actual movie, where it felt like this should have been done on TV. This is not one of those movies. With that being said, I think some things have hurt this film for giving me that full-fledged recommendation. I think one was the dialogue a little bit, but most importantly, the motivation of the two characters. Again, when you look at the characters, you cannot help but scratch your head and say, none of you guys, what you're doing, make any sense. It really, this what you're doing is pointless, and I think that it really, if anything, it just shows just how stupid you are in terms of one, not moving forward, and two, not letting go of your own anger. It really does defeat the purpose. Now, again, as a movie itself, as a brand animation popcorn film, those who like good quality anime, just in itself, you're gonna get that with this movie. You're gonna get good action. If you're looking for that high action, to be honest, how ridiculous it seems, you're gonna get this. But I cannot sit there with a straight face and say that this film is a 3.5 stars or even 3 stars of fulfillment, because it's not. There are some problems with this movie, and one of the things I can't stress this enough: editing. There are some ways, and 4Kids, to me, it's not really much of an excuse, because 4Kids have done an actual good job with their TV series of masking some of the scenes they have actually take out. If you look at the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh! And some of the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you wouldn't notice that it was actually a scene missing until you actually watch the Japanese version. Here, I felt there was something missing from this scene. Another thing is, Diva is a weak character, period. I can't, it's like we went from Kaiba, who's a strong adversary for Hyugi to duel. We had Merit. We had Strouder, who really was more of Kaiba for than Hyugi. We had the guy who was controlling the Musketeers in the Dragon Arc series, which is my personal favorite series. I can't get his name for some reason, but I actually love that villain, even though his name escapes me. I apologize. Raphael was a great anti-villain, because he really wasn't a villain, but he was still great. But let's be honest, the true arch nemesis of Hyugi was always Bakura. I was actually hoping they actually give us that Yami Bakura type villain, because he was the real true threat of Hyugi more than anybody else, because he was there since day one, and he was the one who evolved beyond. Here, I never really felt he was a true villain. I just felt, okay, you're trying to mimic some of the villains of the past, and it's just not working. I just don't feel your feelings, and I really don't consider you as a good duelist either. If anything, I consider you more of a cheater, because the way you've been overpowering some of these monsters, and the way you have no business overpowering. But he's just not a convincing villain to me. He's not a villain that I actually look at and say, oh wow, he's going to be the threat, he's menacing. No, he's really not. He really is. Doesn't mean he doesn't have an interesting backstory. I thought the backstory was very interesting, and why he felt the way he felt, but I felt that villainous situation. I thought that that Neon was a better villain than him. Noah, I'm sorry, Noah was a better villain than him, and I do not like the Noah arc at all. I do not like that series at all. I thought that was a waste of time and space. I don't know why they had any business that's a different story. I don't want to talk about that. But I thought Noah had a much better story arc than he did. I really did. It's just he was the really the weak link next to the side characters. Side characters again was just there. I mean, they just there to give support to Hugo. That's it. They didn't really do anything particularly special. Joey didn't do anything particularly special except save Diva from being bullied in the beginning of the film. But other than that, they was just there just to be there. There was really no reason for them to be there. And as much as Diva was in terms of some of the good action scenes, that was just it. I mean, he really didn't give me anything new other than he was one of these bad guys that Hugo has to face, and that's it. With that being said, it's a 2.5 out of 4. I know people are going to be mad at me, especially if they say, oh, how can it be a 2.5 out of 4? You just gave it praise. Yes, I'm giving it praise for the animation. I'm giving it praise for the fact that I felt like this is a their film that belonged in theaters. There's no question about that. The pacing was good. The action scenes, as goofy they were entertaining. Keep in mind, 2.5 is not a bad thing. It's a not bad, could have been better. The thing is, I'm not going to remember that villain or Diva once the series is over. I'm not going to go back to him. Excuse me. At all. I'm just not. He's irrelevant to me. He's just one of those weak side characters. There is a situation with the dialogue. It's not the strongest in the world. But most importantly, I think the editing really is the final nail in it. I think the editing was obvious. I mean, there was some stuff missing. I felt there was some stuff missing. I'm sitting here looking at this saying, wow, the editing seems very weird. I mean, I can't believe it. So those are the three things that I'm looking at. And I'm also looking at the goofiness of some of the stuff happened. Keep in mind, I'm pretty sure that some of the fans, they have their own feelings about this too for many different reasons. If you love this film and you think it's a 4-star film, by all means, don't make my review mess you up. Like I said, there are going to be different people. I know for a fact, before reviewing this, there was a guy who hated this movie, and he's a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan, and he explained why he hated this film. And some of the stuff I understand that he sees, I see as well, but I'm not that too critical on it because I knew what I was getting into with 4 kids. I knew that if I get something that's at least passable, I'll be fine with it, and I'll give my own opinion on it. This is pretty much almost beyond passable. This actually is a theater movie. This is actually a good theater movie release. It's just not a good enough film to warrant 3 stars, and for the following reasons, I felt that there are some things that could have done better. A lot of emphasis was done in the animation. Kudos to you. That's great. I'm loving it. The voice actors were fantastic. What they did, it felt like they would never left. My only sad regret is that the actor who played Grandpa passed away, and so we had a new actor. But he was all right. He was fine. That did broke my heart that I found out that the original actor who did the voice acting for the American dub of Grandpa passed away, so we never really got that kind of situation. And for the most part, it's a very good letter of goodbye to these old characters. This is the final chapter of this series, of the original series, if you want to count the original series, and and that's not a bad thing. That's good. That's great. With that being said, and I'm supposed to ignore the dialogue, which could be clunky at best? Am I supposed to ignore the fact that the editing wasn't as great as it could have been? No, I'm not. Am I going to ignore the fact that as fun and entertaining as the action scenes are, it's kind of be goofy to the point where you scratch your head and saying, how the hell this is working? But mostly the motivation and story behind it. It's not the best story in the world, and we have seen this done to death. Again, when I hear these stories of these 2 actors, or I may say the 2 characters in this, him and Diva and Kaiba, it scratch your head. You really you're doing all this just for one guy who's been gone already? Where if you guys would just go your separate ways, you'd probably be more happier. If you guys let the thing go, you'd probably be more happy. Especially Kaiba. I mean, Kaiba, come on, man. It's over. The Pharaoh's gone. He's in another world. You're in the living. Just live. But no. End of the film, he finds a way to go to the spirit world. Film ends with him, getting his dual disc ready, which is the holographic dual disc, and you have the Pharaoh just smiling at him. And I know I'm spoiling pretty much the ending, but then again, this is the kind of one of the things that it is a fan-only film, which is unfortunate. But again, you got to understand that only the diehards play Yu-Gi-Oh! Only the diehards really care about the Yu-Gi-Oh! They didn't promote this for the whole general audience. They only promoted where the fans could see it. Word of mouth came from the fans. Those who got attention to it was, of course, the fans, me included. So nobody else cared about this. Not one reviewer, not even from Double Toasted, Johnny Johns, or even the main critics actually talked about this movie. I was like looking for it. I was literally looking to see if anybody, saying anything about this movie. Only the fans was talking about it. Those who actually went and watched the film. Those who actually have been to Die Hard. This film didn't get that much buzz. It really didn't. It was a limited theater release for the fans. And the fans showed up. And the fans have voiced their opinion. I'm voicing my opinion. If you're a fan, add an extra half a star. It's definitely a much better improvement. But to me, it's a 2.5 star film. Not terrible. It's not bad. Could have been better. And then, to me, that's the whole thing. But I will say this: this was a huge good step in the right direction for 4Kids Entertainment, which needed it. Because I still look at them as 4Kids. That's why I know that I didn't say 4K. I still look at them for 4Kids, even though they went bankrupt and they changed stuff to 4K. It's the same damn thing. But they needed this because they have been getting a lot of hot rap. They actually lost a lot of properties because of them decision makings. And listen, I can understand where their point of view is coming from. They are trying to promote a product. They know who their target audience is, and they're going to target those audience heavily. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But the reality is that when you have these kind of movies, you got to step up the game. You can't just treat the audience as kid gloves. And they was trying with this movie. You can tell they was, but they kept enough where it felt like the people of all ages could actually enjoy it, watch it, and basically say their goodbyes to probably one of my favorite animated series of all time, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh! So in all honest, that's how I feel about the movie. Look, I watched this film again. It's definitely a popcorn film worth watching again and again and again. It's definitely something that got me, reinvesting or pretty much looking back into the Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially with the new Link Monsters, which I've seen a lot of videos of, good and bad reviews of the Link Monsters. But it got me really thinking, maybe from time to time I may buy a couple of cards and probably symbolize the deck again. Who knows? I may go back to it. I stopped, collecting cards for a while. It got too expensive. They want a lot of money, almost $5 for a deck. I can't pay $5 for a deck. But every now and then, if I can find something that's really cheap and reasonable, I'll go. I'll collect it. It's no problem. I actually like the Yu-Gi-Oh! I still got one of my cards here today. Let me see if I can find it. But I do have a card. It's an Aqua card. It's a Fusion Monster card. So I still have one card that I still carry with me. It's a good card, one of my favorites. So I still have it. I'll probably talk about it later in another video because I gotta go into one of my drawers, and I'm not gonna go, scrambling over there while I'm doing a video. But the point is, it's definitely got me interested in Duel Monsters again, and that's not a bad thing. It tells you that it really gets you really pumped up. Do something product like this right, and if it gets you pumped up, more than likely you've done your job. You've done his job. So keep that in mind. It's 2.5 star film, but it's not a terrible 2.5 star film. It could have done a lot better on some other qualities here, and that's it. That's all I got to say about that for now. As always, if you see this film, if you like the film, didn't like the film, let me know in the comment section below. Let's share our feelings about this. And until next time, J77 saying take care, be safe. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.